Back in 1975, Congress passed the very first Education for the Handicapped Act, and that was the very first law that mandated that all children with disabilities receive free and appropriate education. So for the first time, many students with disabilities were enrolling in public schools. They passed legislation that asked the Department of Education to commission a study that would focus on students who were in high school, students with disabilities, and then follow their lives into young adulthood. And SRI won the very first contract to design and implement this study. When it became particularly clear that this study was of huge value was during the amendment to the law. And so Congress passed appropriations to have the Department of Ed have more funding to be able to fund studies that looked at students with disabilities across the age range.
It really started with a 10-year study that was conducted. It's called the NEAL study, the National Early Intervention Longitudinal Study, that followed children who were initially in the early intervention program when that first came into law. IDEA included young children with disabilities in 1986. NEALS is the first and only national study of its kind that gave us the information that we have that now informs our technical assistance. As a result of the studies and the research that have been done here at SRI, we have considerable expertise and knowledge about providing technical assistance to states. And we help states implement that to improve their programs for young children with disabilities and their families. But we also learn from our communities that we work with on the research that needs to be done so we can help improve their services.
Our student behavior research program focuses mainly on applied research. We conduct large-scale studies in schools all over the country, from preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, and also focus on children post-secondary. Our research is focused on helping children with behavior disorders, mental health problems, children exposed to trauma, and our level of research focuses on individual students, small groups, classroom level, to whole school programs. And the focus of the project, we want to make sure that when we start with the research study or we start with the intervention, that we start thinking about sustainability from day one. When the grant is over at the end of 3 years or 4 years and we're finished, how can those teachers or the principals continue to implement the program in the schools after we leave?
Special education students, the majority of their academic experience is actually in inclusive general education classrooms. Now, in order to be truly inclusive, we really need these students not only to obtain the appropriate accommodations and supports, but really be in a learning environment that enhances the learning, not just for the student with disability, but for all students in that classroom. So one way that we can approach this is through the Universal Design for Learning framework. And this is an approach that really at its core is meant to identify our understanding that what may be necessary for some students, so those with disabilities, really is meant to benefit all students. With any data that's out there that looks at a nationally representative sample of students in the US with disabilities, SRI has been involved in that work, either as leading the data collection or contributing in some way to these longitudinal studies. From this work that we've been doing, we have affected directly over 15 million students with disabilities in the United States. And that is just tremendously gratifying to know we've had that kind of impact through our research.